My belief is that 2011 is going to start the turning point for everything. We have already hit the bottom, in my opinion. Now, that may or may not be the case, but this is my personal opinion again. Banks are losing government incentives to hang on to their cash reserves. And of course, the toxic debt scramble is ending. Pretty much all the banks that are going to collapse have collapsed. All the toxic debt that's going to be collected and picked up by these stronger banks have already been picked up. And so, not to say that there's not going to be any more bank failures, but I'm saying that the worst is behind us in that regard. And so, banks will no longer have the incentive of hanging on to large cash reserves because there's really not a lot of toxic debt to be picked up anymore. And then the government, hopefully, they're talking about pulling out, offering any kind of incentives, including interest on their reserves, just to be able to get these banks lending the money back out to the public. China manufacturing plants are reopening after many have shut down since 2008. When China's opening plants, they're not doing it because they're assuming that there's going to be a future in manufacturing or boxing, but that they know that they're getting the business or becoming busier with our higher rates of consumption. So this is a good sign. This is actually a factual piece of information I'm giving you, where manufacturing plants have been opening left and right in China to start production on products that we have made there, in addition to boxing up a lot of the products that they make and then having it shipped in here in the United States for our consumption. And so when they're actually getting busier, it means that the economy is starting to recover. Lenders are already lightening up on the purse strings. This is something that I've personally noticed in my own lending activities with commercial real estate, whereas they're doing things that they haven't done in years, years and years. They're starting to lighten up the requirements. Their underwriting is going a little bit more smoothly, and they're doing a lot of things that they've never done before in commercial lending, period. And so that is showing me a turning point here right now at the beginning of 2011. And of course, as long as you're prepared for what's coming up, you're not going to be left swinging out in the wind. But if you do nothing, then you're going to remain uneducated, especially in the cutting edge fields and trades such as computer tech. And you're going to be left behind, probably without a job, because as I had described, minimum wage stuff is going to be pretty much null and void. And I'm talking about 10, 20 years from now. I'm not talking about next year. But if you're not going to educate yourself, or at least try to educate yourself, then start a business or start investing. Um, if you invest in nothing or become an entrepreneur, you're not going to get anywhere, and you'll probably be government dependent and die broke if you absolutely do nothing. So you have some choices. If you don't feel like you're prepared to invest in real estate or anything else, or stocks, or become an entrepreneur by starting a business, then you do have to think in terms of being a paycheck Charlie, which means that you do have to become more cognizant of the fact that you're going to be part of different trade schools, and you're going to be educating yourself a lot with computer science and computer technology to be able to keep up with the different changes and requirements that we're going to have in the future, in addition to being able to survive now. So if you want to have a job for the rest of your life, which is fine, because I'm not here to condemn you for that, to each their own, I say. But you do need to become educated in the right fields if you're going to survive in this economy coming up. And I always recommend that you have several legs to your entrepreneurialism. And even if you're not an entrepreneur and you work for someone for the rest of your life, you should still be funneling some of your money into other investments, because I'm assuming that you don't want to work for somebody for the rest of your life. And the days of Social Security and pension are rapidly dying. So don't expect to start working for a company in 25 years. They're going to pay you to sit on your ass while you enjoy, the golden years, because it's probably not going to happen. So hopefully you're smart enough to funnel some of that cash that you're making from your highly paid computer tech job or whatever you're doing into real estate and other types of investment vehicles. You could obviously be proactive, invest. If the dollar collapses, if you have investments in real estate will never be worth zero. So, for example, as everybody knows what happened with Enron, whereas the stock literally went to zero. Real estate will never happen. That will never happen with real estate. You cannot go to a zero worth with real estate, especially with the amount of people that live here in the United States. Over 300 million, and you're not going to have, property going to zero worth or zero, like an Enron stock would, for example, or any other stock has a high risk of going to zero. So if you invest in real estate, there might be fluctuations, especially if the dollar collapses, but you will still have assets that are worth something, more so than any cash that you would have on hand at the time. You can start a business, which I always recommend. You can start any kind of business and again, funnel that money into other investments to whereas you can sustain yourself or support yourself, when you do want to retire. Or you can educate yourself, become a paycheck Charlie, and work for a company or even become an entrepreneur as a tech in the computer science trade or field. But as long as you're educated, you'll be able to get those high-paying jobs or have your high-paying business to be able to support that. But if you don't have the kind of education and experience that requires, you're not going to make it because the lower-paying jobs are just not going to exist anymore. And of course, opportunity happens when nobody else is paying attention because everybody's panicking based on what the media is telling them to buy, as far as what news they're dishing out that day. So when everybody's panicking because the stock market's crashing and everything else is going, to hell in a handbasket, nobody's really paying attention to the opportunities, and that's what you need to focus in on. So when everybody's panicking, you need to stay as cool-headed as possible, remain as emotionless as possible, and start to really pick apart what opportunities are there while everybody's running and screaming in the streets holding their heads, okay? The 2011 turning point will happen probably by late summer or fall of this year, okay? So that's my prediction. Again, this isn't set in stone. I don't know everything. We might still have another major calamity in the future. We might even have a full-blown stock market crash in the future, okay? But that's my opinion on what I've seen so far. So that means that right now you need to get your ass moving. You need to try to grab up as many real estate properties as possible right now while the opportunity still exists, while you still can get things for pennies on the dollar, especially with bank-owned foreclosure properties. Consider rehab property opportunities that people are afraid of because those are the ones that you can get the highest amount of return on investment with. But also consider looking into mobile home parks because they're absolute gold mines. They can offer the highest cap rates, the highest cash flow. They have the lowest maintenance, whereas basically you can own a piece of property, rent out your pads, and then you have your tenants basically plop their mobile home onto your pad, and they are responsible for all the upkeep. Their toilet breaks, they have to fix their own toilet. They have to basically, deal with all of the issues that they have on their mobile home, and you're just leasing out a piece of property. The only upkeep you have is to make sure that the sewer systems are intact and in place and working functionally. Make sure that all of the common area utilities are, working and paid for, and of course landscaping. And so they are cash cows. And I wasn't a fan of mobile home parks a couple years ago, but ever since last year, when there's been a lot of lenders popping up that will offer quite a bit of funding for these deals that did not exist before because it was very difficult to get a mobile home park funded due to the fact that it's considered almost like raw land without structures that are on it. So they appraised out really low. Now there's a lot of lenders that will do mobile home parks. And because you have a lot of old geezers that own these parks, that have owned them forever, they're still part of the old school mentality that it's very difficult to get funding for these mobile home parks, and they have a boatload of equity in there because they've owned them forever. So you go on LoopNet or anywhere else, and you could see mobile home park after mobile home park listing where they automatically will offer a lot of owner financing as part of these deals because they know how difficult it used to be to get funding, and they have a lot of equity because they've owned the property forever. So it's a new up and coming investment opportunity that you should consider becoming part of because not a lot of people are doing it. There's less competition in that field right now. You need to also learn how to think outside of the box. Fix your personal credit while you're building your business credit. Credit is usually the crux on how you can basically make your life work, and it's not very difficult to fix your personal credit at all. And I don't recommend you hire a service or anything. I recommend you do it yourself, and you should be building business credit at the same time, especially if you want to take advantage of international investment opportunities or international loan programs. Use other people's credit when necessary. If your credit is not good, you use your father-in-law's, your brother-in-law's, use somebody's credit. They're usually willing to partake in some kind of investment opportunity especially if you sell it to them with a good presentation. Raise money from private investors and equity partnerships. You can also get money from friends and family. There's a lot of people out there that don't realize it, especially if they have parents that are retired, where a lot of people don't understand the power of investing in commercial real estate. So therefore, they have no idea what the cash flow potentials are. Well, if you sit there and do a PowerPoint presentation and offer them one of my cash flow evaluators where you could show somebody the potential profit of a property, people get excited about that, especially if you present it well and with confidence. You'll be surprised at how many friends, family members, coworkers, cohorts of yours, associates that will be jumping on board because they don't have the ability to know what to do with commercial real estate like you hopefully do by now if you've gone through any of my course materials. Use my DPA methods, which I have a video that talks in length about how to use DPA. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just refer to that video. And of course, consider grant programs to be able to get property deals rolling and moving. Could 2012, a lot of people were predicting that 2012 would be the demise for all of us. I don't believe in mass devastation or deaths. I believe that the Mayan calendar was on a different calendar than we have, which was, as everybody knows, is based on Christ's death. And the Mayan Indians had a calendar that was, thousands of years older than the birth of Christ. So therefore, the 2012 number, I don't know where anybody's getting this from, but I think it's based on, just a bunch of nonsense. Just like the Y2K thing, if everybody remembers what was supposed to happen when 1999 turned into 2000, everything was supposed to, collapse, and none of that happened. So, it's just one of these things where people just like to, do the conspiracy slash, let's make everybody fearful of what's going to happen. I do believe that there's going to be some major economic changes. We're going to be more globalized 2012 and out. We're going to be collectively becoming more together as an entire world nation rather than just individual nations. I do believe that the stock market is due for another major crash. But again, if you have a lot of interest in real estate and you have your money in real estate, stock market, doesn't matter what the hell happens to it, it's not going to affect you at all. So if there's a stock market crash in 2012, like a lot of people are predicting, so what? Who cares? It doesn't affect you if you're a real estate investor. It could be the year of a full-blown depression, especially if the U.S. dollar collapses, but I don't think that that's going to happen. This could push us into a global economic disaster, obviously, if the U.S. dollar does collapse. This is why I think that we're having a lot of talks under the table with a lot of other nation leaders to figure out how we could sort out our economic problems so that everybody can survive and thrive rather than everybody basically going into a full-blown collapse because the United States can't make it economically. But always remember that during the Great Depression, the rich got richer. In devastation, there's always opportunity if you choose to see it. And don't get sucked into the doom and gloom. If you have to stop watching the news for a while, go ahead and stop watching the news because usually they don't tell you anything useful anyway. But don't get sucked into the fear, because it'll disallow you from seeing the opportunity out there. Train yourself to remain emotionless no matter what happens and stay focused on creative opportunity strategies, as you go along. Regardless of what actually happens, be prepared for whatever is about to happen, no matter what it is, okay? Just don't do nothing. If you sit around and do nothing because you might predict a devastation, what if there is no devastation? I still have people that I talk to on the phone that are kicking themselves for not investing in real estate in the 70s. Well, let me tell you, investing in real estate now is better than investing in the real estate in the 70s. I can tell you that right now. And I was born in the 70s, so I didn't have the opportunity of investing in real estate in the 70s. But I still have people I talk to on the phone kicking themselves. Oh, I wish I would have gotten started in the 70s. Well, forget the 70s. Let's get started now, okay? But if you do nothing because you're predicting a major stock market crash or a full-blown depression or whatever, you're going to be left out. Because again, those that lost the most in the Great Depression were those that didn't own anything. They didn't have anything. They didn't have any stocks. They didn't have any real estate. They didn't have anything. So if you have something, no matter what happens, regardless of whether there is a stock market crash or not, or a Great Depression or not, you will still come out on top if you are progressive and you actually start to collect assets, no matter what happens. You will only lose if you choose to do nothing and collect no assets at all. Take advantage of the deals out there and progress forward no matter what is predicted to happen, because you will come out on top either way, regardless of whether 2011 is truly the pinnacle point of us turning around our economy or whether or not it's just the beginning of another part 2 disaster. It doesn't matter what happens. As long as you do something, you will come out on top. The only time you will not come out on top is if you cower in fear and do absolutely nothing. because you will not come out on top with anything. Okay? So now it's time. Get out there and kick some ass. I'm glad you joined me for this lengthy presentation. This is Monica Main signing off, and I'll see you at the top.